It's the amazing Rico Brogna podcast with your host, Evan Roberts.
Rico Brogna. The New York Mets win a damn game for the first time in a long week. For the first time since that Sunday night at Citi Field against the Philadelphia Phillies, the Mets win a game. Thank God they did. This could have been a bigger disaster than what is already shaping up to potentially be a disaster. This Sunday could have been awful. I mean, I'm a Jet fan. I'll get into that more on the radio show at 2 o'clock on Monday. That was a putrid loss. But the New York Mets did something very, very nice for all of us. They actually gave us a stress-free victory. There were minor moments of stress. You know, only scoring one run in the first inning and leaving a couple of guys on base. That was a little bit of stress. I'll give you that. Having opportunities in the second and third inning and not being able to score runs, that was a little bit of stress. But David Peterson was awesome. He was locked down. He's as good as we've ever seen him. The Mets were able to get some big hits, specifically Francisco Lindor, and they're able to win a game they needed to have. Going into this Sunday, it wasn't simple. There were a lot of complicated scenarios, but to simplify things, if the Mets won this game, which they were able to do, at the bare minimum, worst case scenario, they'd have to go to Atlanta and win one game in a doubleheader against the Atlanta Braves. They were not going to be set up to where they were going to have to win multiple games in Atlanta against the Braves. So winning this game was incredibly important. And as bad as things were on Saturday, and as bad as things were on Friday, and as bad as things were on Tuesday, give this team credit, they responded. They bounced back. I thought Francisco Lindor, in a lot of ways, set the tone for this game, drawing that leadoff walk and then immediately stealing second base. Almost a reminder of, all right, I may be a little bit compromised, but I can still make that impact. And I think getting a runner on second and nobody out right off jump at least set them up to take a lead. We talked about this on last night's Rico. The Mets have not had a lead since Sunday. I think it was 20 of the 27 innings they had played on this three-game road trip. They were trailing. They were playing from behind the entire time. So I thought it was very, very important to get an early run. It wasn't easy because, you know, Lindor steals second base and Jose Iglesias, as much as we love him, gets ahead of the count 3-1 and taps the ball to shortstop. Can't even advance Lindor to third. But Brandon Nimmo, who has been absolutely miserable, did not have a great rest of the game. But for at least one moment, we give Brandon Nimmo credit because he did come through with a very clutch RBI single to give this team an early lead. It was unfortunate because Mark Vientos hit the ball hard too, but hit right at the shortstop. Pete actually had a quality at-bat that set up J.D. Martinez with 2 on and 2 out. So J.D. was set up back in this lineup to break out of his massive Ordonez-like slump in a big spot, in a big moment, give this team a bigger lead right off the top. And instead, he hit the ball about 395 feet. Unfortunately, he hit it to center field. So I thought getting that first inning run was very, very important. It relaxed my nerves. You know, I know it felt for everybody else, though I wasn't that, relaxed at the moment because I was too busy watching the absolutely pathetic display at MetLife Stadium. I was doing both at the same time. Usually I would DVR, I would pause. On a day like today, there's no effing DVRing. It's literally living and dying with every pitch or every snap. And I did think, I know one thing has to do nothing with the other, but I did think that when Greg Zuerlein missed that 50-yard field goal, it was a horrible omen for us. Now, the Mets were actually breaking the game open. I think that was in the fourth inning when Zuerlein missed that field goal. And the fourth inning was really the inning where the comfort level got moved up quite a bit. That's when JD led off with that double. Looked like that ball hit the third base bag. It's tough. I saw a replay, but then I was distracted. But it looked like he hit the ground ball. It hit the bag at third base, kind of jumped up a little bit and bounced in the left field. And he was able to hustle for a double. I like Marte laying the bunt down. I don't have any problem with that. Look, I think you got to be aggressive and just trying to get runs on the board. And Starling Marte early in this game tried to lay down a bunt for a hit. That didn't work out. I appreciated the effort, but didn't work out. But with a runner on second and nobody out, even with 8-9 coming up, I didn't mind it. I thought to myself, you know what? You have Alvarez and you have Tyrone Taylor. Those are better than your normal 8-9 hitters. So I like that Marte was laying a bunt down trying to advance the runner, and Francisco Alvarez came through with an RBI hit. How about the fact that Francisco Alvarez looked like he died on the baseball field 2 nights ago? I mean, it looked like he was going on the IL, and we were going to see a guy like Hayden Singer called up, and basically we were going to live with Luis Torrens's limp bat for the rest of time. And Alvarez not only comes back, he comes back the next day on Saturday, and then today gets 2 hits and hit the ball hard just about every time up. He looked very, very good. But that RBI single was tremendous to give them the 2-0 lead. Tyrone Taylor got another base hit, and then you have Francisco Lindor. Francisco Lindor is not going to win the MVP. I think we all know that. But he is back. He's playing through this back issue. He was back at shortstop in this game, and he had some very good at-bats. That leadoff walk, like I mentioned, very important. Stealing second base right off the top, very important. And he comes through in the 4th inning with an RBI single to give them that 3-0 lead. And David Peterson was so locked in and looked so good in this game that 3 was going to be enough. 4 was going to be enough when they tacked on another run on the Alvarez sacrifice fly. The only thing that was frustrating was that they ended up scoring 5 runs in this game. They should have scored 8 runs in this game. They left a lot of opportunities on the base paths. Now, I'm not complaining about it because they won, and I never really had that much concern, but they did. I mean, they could have scored 7 or 8 runs. They left a lot of opportunities out there. But then Lindor hitting the home run in the 6th inning to make it a 5-0 game, the final run that they scored, was just another great sign that even though he is compromised, even though he's not fully healthy, Francisco Lindor can still make a big impact on this team. And I thought he made one in this game. The leadoff walk, the RBI single in the 4th, 2 stolen bases, the home run in the 6th inning. Great, great job by Francisco Lindor and Francisco Alvarez. I mean, they're both hitting. Pete Alonso, look, I think that Pete had some decent at-bats, especially the walk in the 1st inning, and he made a great play defensively that I won't forget. It was right at the beginning of the game, first batter of the game. Bryce Terang hit that hard ground ball to third base, and Vientos made the bad throw to first base. So Pete looked good at first base, but we're still waiting. We're still waiting for that impactful swing. Luckily, in a game like this, they didn't need it. I thought the 3rd inning was a great opportunity when he came up with a runner on second, 2 outs, only up 1-0. But they're going to need it at some point in this doubleheader against Atlanta, or dare I say the playoffs if the Mets are fortunate enough to make it. So that was the only negative. You know, Pete still didn't break through, but Vientos had a couple of good at-bats. Iglesias had 2 more hits, which he seems to do every single night. J.D. Martinez appears to be breaking out of his massive slump. Francisco Alvarez looked good. So it was all around a very, very good, complete performance by this Met team. Now, let me get to the pitching. I also want to point out for our live viewers, for those that are watching on YouTube, I have the Atlanta Brave game on right in front of me. It is the bottom of the 9th inning. The Kansas City Royals lead 4-2. Before we continue on talking about the Met win and probably interluding with some of the Braves-Royals action from the bottom of the 9th inning, here's the situation. The Mets only have to win once on Monday. Nothing changes that. They win 1 game in a doubleheader, they go to the postseason. If the Atlanta Braves don't come back and they lose this game to Kansas City, they too need 1 win in a doubleheader to make the playoffs, which means, at least in game 1 of the doubleheader, both teams are going balls to the wall. Both teams need a win. Whoever wins that game, they're in the postseason. But we would be guaranteed that there would have to be a second game of that doubleheader, no matter what, and the losing team of game 1 needs to win game 2. The winning team of game 1 has no motivation other than knocking out their rival. That's if the Braves don't come back. The reason why I sit here, and we should all be sitting here, hoping that the Braves have a rally in them with 8, 9, and 1 of the order, is that if they win, they clinch. And so that doubleheader on Monday, same situation for the Mets. They only have to win once, but the Braves would be playing for nothing. I don't even know who they would start in this game. And while, yes, that tracks to be one of the most painful Met moments, getting swept of a doubleheader by the Atlanta Braves that meant nothing to them, yes, that would fit a storybook of pain very, very well. The reality is they have a much better chance to make the postseason if the Atlanta Braves come back and win, punch a playoff ticket, party hardy tonight, and then are forced to play a doubleheader, that means absolutely nothing to them. So that's what's on hand. And luckily, Gio Urshela begins the bottom of the ninth inning with a leadoff single. So the Braves are down 4-2. They got a runner on first, nobody out. This is like practice for me, Hoff, because on the Evan and Tiki program on Monday, we have no other choice. While we'll do a regular show talking about the Jets, the Karl Anthony Towns trade, it will also be a viewing party. We invite every Met fan. Have the game on, TV in the background, listen to us. We'll be constantly talking about the game, updating the game, reacting to the game. No play-by-play, but giving you kind of that live reaction. So this Brave Royal ninth inning, it's like a warm-up, all right? So right now, one on, nobody out, and guess who's coming up with the Braves as the tying run? The man who hit the game-winning home run last night, the former Met, Travis d'Arnaud. Did I explain this situation very well on why we want the Braves to come back?
Yeah, you did. You did, because I get it. I'm still torn. I understand why.
You're torn?
Well, yeah, because obviously I want to get in. That's a no-brainer. But you make it sound like the Braves are going to go into these games tomorrow and not want to win.
Well, I didn't say that. What I said was there's a better chance of you beating the Atlanta Braves when they're going to manage the game as if nothing's on the line. You know, I firmly believe that Major League Baseball players, especially ones that are in a division rival, of course going to want to win. You know, Gio Urshela's at the plate, he's going to want to win. Travis d'Arnaud's at the plate, he's going to want to win. If Marcell Ozuna gets at-bats, he's going to want to win. Matt Olson's going to want to hit. No one is denying that. But you manage games incredibly differently when the situation tells you you're already in the playoffs. Think about the pitching. You know, the Atlanta Braves have Spencer Schwellenbach and Chris Sale ready to go in this doubleheader. If they win this game against Kansas City and the games don't matter, logic would tell you Chris Sale is not getting anywhere close to a mound on Monday. He'll be ready to go for game one of the wild card series. And by the way, I assume the same thing with Spencer Schwellenbach. I assume the Braves would do the same thing. So I don't even know who they would pitch. Wouldn't be Charlie Morton, he pitched today. Wouldn't be Grant Holmes, he came out of the bullpen today. Wouldn't be Reynaldo Lopez, he pitched the other day. Wouldn't be Max Fried. Like, it doesn't mean it's a guarantee the Mets are going to win, because competitors go on the field and they try. Of course they try. But the managing in terms of pitching would be incredibly different if the Braves win this game and have a playoff spot wrapped up. So there's nothing to be mixed about. There's nothing to be conflicted about. Let's go Braves. All right? It's a one-time thing. I'm probably never going to say it again. But right now, yeah, I want them to come back so the games mean nothing to them on Monday. What the hell's wrong with that?
I'm very sober right now, so I don't think I would have let this kind of slide by yesterday. But there's no let's go Braves. There's no let's go Braves. Can't do it. Can't do it. If we could find a way to knock out the Braves in the playoffs, I'd prefer that. I really would.
If we're allowed to write our own magical script that we know will end well, sure. Mets win game one, make the playoffs, and then they take the foot off the gas in game two in terms of bullpen management, and somehow the Braves can't hit them. You know, Adam Ottavino pitches 3 scoreless innings. Danny Young pitches 3 scoreless innings, and the Braves are sent home. Of course that would be great. But logically, if we're being realistic, and baseball is a very tough sport to predict. I'm the first to admit that. I don't think logic told you the results that we may be headed to. We already know the Mets won. We know the Diamondbacks won. They beat the crap out of the Padres after going down very early. But I think everybody assumed that the Atlanta Braves would definitely come back and clinch. Travis d'Arnaud struck out on a 92-mile-per-hour fastball, so 1 on, 1 out in the bottom of the ninth inning with the Braves trailing 4-2. So I get that in baseball, anything can happen, but I would take my chances on a scenario where the Braves aren't playing for much. Like, I'm thinking about it right now. If the Braves don't come back, and we'll obviously be doing the Rico live when they lose or when they win, so we'll be able to instantly react to what we would do officially. But I assume the Braves are going to go Spencer Schwellenbach in game one, because Brian Snitker reportedly had said he's not pitching Chris Sale until their backs are against the wall. Well, their backs won't be against the wall in game one. Their backs would be against the wall in game two if they lost game one. And that's the same dilemma the Mets have right now. Luis Severino and Tyler McGill are the two scheduled starters for the doubleheader on Monday in Atlanta. We know that. That is easy considering the three starters that they've recently used. That was logical. The three starters that they've recently used. Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. I'm confusing myself. So we know it's McGill and Severino. The order of it, I mean, that's on the line. You know, the broadcasters, Gary, Keith, and Ron, were saying they would go for the kill with Luis Severino. I wouldn't. I'll tell you right now, I'd start Tyler McGill in game one, probably either way. Either way. You got a beautiful dog there with you, Pete. What's your dog's name?
Joni. She's a wet
Joni.
dog. She just came out from outside. She's very wet.
Well, listen, we're all very, very wet. That's for damn sure. So, to me, I go conservative and I go McGill. Anyhow, Michael Harris is up with one on and one out. More on the Mets in this game, this Sunday game. David Peterson was outstanding and he was efficient. And after he was done through 7 and his pitch count was at 95, I thought Carlos Mendoza was facing a very difficult decision. What do? You have a 5-0 lead. You still need to get 6 outs. 5-0 lead is not 11-0. It's 5-0. It can very easily become a close game. Do you go to one of your guys in the circle of trust, knowing that you're using them today on a Sunday, and then does it affect their availability on a Monday? Do you go with one of your lower leverage guys, but then take the risk that the Atlanta Braves make it closer? Or do you push David Peterson? I got to tell you, my gut going into the 8th inning with a pitch count of 95, with how good David Peterson looked, was to ride him, was to push him just a little bit more, with my thought being, I don't want to have to use any of my high leverage arms, but I totally understand why I have to, because I need to assure a victory. Michael Harris had a little chopper to first base, and the lead runner was thrown out at second. So the Braves are down to their final out. The Kansas City Royals are 1 out away from moving. Well, they're in the playoffs, but it would actually affect who they play in the playoffs, and would actually affect Yankee fans. Royals win, and the Royals are going to be locked in against the Baltimore Orioles in the wild card series, with the winner facing the Yankees. The Tigers would go to that other bracket and take on the Houston Astros. And like we talked about, the Braves would have a lot on the line tomorrow in this doubleheader, and it would ensure 2 games are played. So I would have pushed David Peterson a little bit more. He goes to Phil Maton. And why that was, to me, the concerning move, even more than going to Edwin Diaz in the 9th inning, is that Maton pitched yesterday. So if Phil Maton is called upon to pitch in any of those 2 games on Monday, and I would assume it's not going to be both of them, he would have to pitch on a 3rd straight day. Do you know how many times Phil Maton has pitched in 3 straight days this season? The answer is 0. Hasn't happened. I went back to last year, 2023. He did it 1 time, and he had a very rocky inning. Gave up a home run. Didn't implode, got a save, but that was the only time in the last 2 years Phil Maton has pitched in back-to-back-to-back games. And if the Mets are playing any kind of close game, even if it's not a close game, you want to lock this crap down. Phil Maton is one of the guys in the circle of trust. Ozzie Albies pops one up. It's going to get out of the going to foul territory. What was I going to say? It's going to go into the stands. I was looking for the term stands. 1 ball, 2 strikes. So the Braves are down to their final strike, and they would be the one loser in the 3-headed race for the 2 National League wildcard spots. So I didn't love going to Phil Maton just because I'm worried about A, his availability for Monday, and B, even if you go to him, because you kind of have to, right? Season's on the line. How effective is he going to be? Look, I'm not thinking about Tuesday. That, of course, is game 1 of the wild card series. And by the way, it is official. The Atlanta Braves have lost to the Kansas City Royals. Ozzie Albies grounded out, and the Braves lose. So the Atlanta Braves do not clinch. They will go into this doubleheader in the same situation as us, which means they got to win 1 of 2. We got to win 1 of 2. If either team sweeps, the Diamondbacks make the playoffs. I wouldn't feel great if I'm a Diamondback fan right now, because whoever wins game 1, think about what that lineup is going to look like in game 2. Think about who's going to pitch in game 2. It's not an ideal situation for them, but it is baseball, and weird crap happens. So this is not the worst case scenario for us, but this wasn't our best case scenario. Our best case scenario was clinching. Our second best case scenario was only needing one win and the Braves playing for nothing. The third one, the one in the middle, was we only need one win, but the Braves also need one win. And that's the circumstances we're in. So the Atlanta Braves, the one freaking time I root for them, the one time any of us root for these bastards, and what do? They lose to the Kansas City Royals 4-2, and their 5-game winning streak is over. And now, thank you, Major League Baseball. Your fault. We are guaranteed to have a doubleheader. There's no play one game and then we're done. It is a guaranteed doubleheader on Monday. And then both teams potentially, if they split, are flying to another city to play the next day. And watch this, because you know this will happen because Major League Baseball is run by a bunch of schmucks. Someone's going to have to play early. So you're going to play a doubleheader that ain't going to end till, God knows what time, 7:30 at night, 8 o'clock at night. You're going to fly to Milwaukee or San Diego, and one of those games is going to start at like 5 o'clock Eastern time. They should move it back, but they won't because Major League Baseball doesn't give a rat's ass. So it is now official. Mets-Braves doubleheader. Both teams need a win to make the postseason. Any thoughts?
I have a question for you. Has there ever been a day where both teams celebrate on the same field after making the playoffs? Because that's what's going to happen tomorrow.
I'm sure there's been double headers of the past where one team clinched the division and another team clinched the wild card. I do remember it wasn't the same day, but in 2000, the Braves won the NL East at Shea Stadium one night, and then the next day we won the wild card. And so we celebrated the next day. They celebrated the night before. Both those celebrations were pretty muted. I don't know what these celebrations look like tomorrow. And look, honestly, I hope there are two. I really do. I mean, yes, in a perfect world, we win both. We knock the Atlanta Braves out. That would feel good. But I just need one win. That's all we need. I mean, knocking the Atlanta Braves out would be, icing on the cake. And if we're sitting there after a Met victory and after the Mets officially punch a ticket to the postseason, will I sit there and root with whoever is playing for the Mets to win to knock them out? Sure. But right now, I'm fearful of the disaster. I'm fearful of this season potentially ending by getting swept by the Atlanta Braves. I'm scared. I'll admit it. I'm raising my hand up. I'm scared. I don't look at this as, oh, yeah, we got them right where we want them. I'm scared.
Yeah, I'm not scared because today they bounced back the way they needed to. I know they weren't up against the best pitching, but they did enough to win. And I still think tomorrow, it's not ideal scenario, but I do think that in the end, whoever wins that first game, like you said, it's kind of almost like, are they going to be gunning to try to knock out the other team? They just made the playoffs. They can sit back and relax and let things just be as it is, which is kind of it's kind of great for the team that doesn't win the first game.
Yeah. So here's the problem with all of that. If the Mets don't win game one, okay, they are the loser of game one. The Atlanta Braves officially punch a ticket. They're going to the playoffs. And now, a half hour later, game two starts with the season on the line, and the Atlanta Braves are starting effing Dylan Lee. Like, they are just going to throw all their bullpen guys out there, which is also not ideal for the Braves because they're going to play a playoff game the next day. And so, sure, you can change your roster for the wild card series, obviously, but how many changes are you really making? It's not like you're making household changes. There's probably a guy or two that you may exert in that second game, thinking, all right, I'll just take him off the roster in the wild card series. No harm, no foul. So that is true. So let's just say in the scenario of Mets lose game one. Okay, don't worry. We got game two. The Braves are excited. They made the playoffs. They're going to sit Marcell Ozuna. They're going to sit Matt Olson. They're going to sit two or three guys. They can't sit everybody because remember, there's only 5 bench pieces with these 28-man rosters, right? So you sit a bunch of guys, and now it's a cavalcade of brave arms that are going to just try to get those 27 outs. We're not going to sweat our asses off. We're not going to sit there thinking, can you believe this? We're not going to be able to hit this guy. We're not going to be able to hit that guy. Like, that sounds like one of the worst 2.5-hour experiences you could ever think of. I'm being honest with you. It doesn't mean the odds don't favor that whoever loses game one wins game two because John Brebbia is going to pitch 5 innings for Atlanta. Or in our case, Danny Young is going to try to eat up 4 innings for the Mets. I get that. I don't want to be in that scenario. Let me get to the Diaz thing on going to him. I was okay with going with Edwin Diaz. I was. And hear me out on this, because he ended up throwing a lot of pitches, which was less than ideal. I mean, who the hell wanted Edwin Diaz out there throwing 30 pitches? Edwin Diaz in general pitches a lot better when he's not rested for a week. And you saw that in this game. You saw it. His velocity was down. He didn't have that same kind of sharpness he usually has. So I thought it was smart to just get him in there, get him an inning, and move on. The reality is, it is unlikely he would have to pitch 2 games in this doubleheader because, I mean, unless he blew game one, I mean, that would be the scenario where he comes into a game, it's 5-4 in the 9th inning, he comes in to get the save, blows the game, and now you're playing game 2, backs are against the wall, and you have another lead. So I think that's the scenario where, yeah, maybe Edwin would have to pitch both games of a doubleheader, and that would mean 3 appearances basically in less than 24 hours, which I would still do if my season's on the line. I mean, what choice do you have? And Edwin in the past has shown he pitches well or pitches better when he's worked. So I did think it was important to get him in a game. Otherwise, he hadn't pitched in 8 days. Like, that's not good for him. And again, I think it's unlikely he's going to have to pitch twice. Sure, there is that scenario where Diaz comes in, blows a game, and now you've got to win the second game, and here comes Edwin Diaz, and you need him. But more likely than not, if you're losing the first game and it's 5-1 in the 9th inning, you're not going to Edwin Diaz. And you know in the back of your mind, you have the second game. That's why managing game 1 doesn't have to be balls to the walls, because you know, all right, we lose this game, we got one more crack at it. And as we talked about, we also know that the Atlanta Braves are probably going to use a lot of low leverage guys just to get through those 27 outs. Now, I don't care about this. You don't care about this. The Braves shouldn't care about this. But this doubleheader is a joke for Major League Baseball. It really is. Because under these circumstances we're laying out, whoever loses game 1, whoever wins game 1, game 2 looks very different. Game 1 is a genuine, hey, we got to win. It's almost like a 1-game playoff for both teams. You win, you get in. You lose, you get a second opportunity against a team that's basically not going to pitch anybody. So that's the scenario where it doesn't look good for Major League Baseball. If you're an Arizona Diamondback fan right now, you don't feel great. Now, the reality is maybe you shouldn't have lost 2 out of 3 to the San Diego Padres. Maybe you should have gone out and won more games. Maybe you shouldn't have blown an 8-run lead a week ago. But what a weird way for this season to come down to. I mean, think about just how freaking weird this whole thing is. A doubleheader in which if you win, you're in, and if you lose, you get a second crack at getting in. It's unbelievable. As far as seeding is concerned, in case anyone cares about that, if there's a split, doesn't matter how the split goes. Mets win game 1, lose game 2. Mets lose game 1, win game 2, win game 1, lose game 2. No matter how you dice it, if the Mets and the Braves are both making the postseason, the Atlanta Braves would actually win the tiebreaker. So they would get that 5 seed, and they would play the San Diego Padres. So the only way the Mets would play the San Diego Padres, if that's what you desire, would be the Mets beating the Padres twice, beating the Braves twice. If they beat them twice and knock them out, the Mets would be the 5 seed. They would play San Diego, and the Arizona Diamondbacks would play the Milwaukee Brewers. In fact, the Arizona Diamondbacks are either out or they're playing the Brewers. There is no scenario where the Arizona Diamondbacks are playing the San Diego Padres, the team they just played. So, yeah, a lot of this is just very, very weird. Carlos Mendoza, after the game, made it official that Luis Severino and Tyler McGill are obviously going to start these 2 games. Hoff, has he announced who starts game 1 yet? Has that been made official by Carlos Mendoza?
I will look for you. That I have not seen, but I'll let you know.
Am I crazy to say I would start Tyler McGill in game 1? I would go just a little bit conservative and say, hey, McGill has pitched well. Also, let's point that out. The Braves have a lot of right-handers in their lineup. And also, if I win, I don't pitch Severino in game 2. He's good to go in game 1 of the wild card series. And I'm not doing it as much about the wild card series more than it is I like having that, my better pitcher almost in reserve in case things go badly. So I lean, Gary, Keith, and Ron disagreed. I would lean towards Tyler McGill starting game 1.
No, I'm the same way as you are, because I got to be honest with you. I don't trust McGill. McGill can get blown up in the first 2 innings. And then what are we going to do? But at that point, like we just talked about, the Braves won't be pitching Chris Sale in the following game. And then you have Severino, and you hope that he can have a day.
Well, that's a great point, too. If McGill blows up and the Mets have to use a lot of their bullpen in game 1, you're also going to probably try to be smart about it. I mean, you're going to almost say, we need one guy to take one for the team. And maybe the guy taking one for the team is actually Tyler McGill, that if he pitches badly, you're not rushing to go to the bullpen because you're going to need your bullpen in the second game. Couple of things. Francisco Alvarez came out of this game. Remember, he left the game late. I didn't think much of it. I thought it was just precautionary because he had that back issue 2 days ago. According to Carlos Mendoza, he came out of the game with a tight hamstring. He was walking with a limp. Carlos Mendoza called it a lower half cramping. Alvarez says he doesn't expect it to linger. So it doesn't sound like that keeps him out of a game. It sounds like Alvarez, who clearly was a quick healer when it came to the whole back thing. I mean, he was back playing the following day. I would expect that Francisco Alvarez will be in the lineup for game 1 of the doubleheader against the Braves. I think he's going to play both games unless the Mets win game 1. Obviously, that's the game changer. The game changer is win game 1. A lot of guys are going to sit. You win game 1, Francisco Lindor ain't going to play the second game of the doubleheader. The problem is, not really a problem. It's actually good for baseball that this is the case. But if this was 8 years ago and you had 40-man rosters and you had just filled benches, then a team could make a mockery of the second game. You could make it very easily. You could have made a mockery of some of these games over the final weekend of the season when teams had things wrapped up. You can't do that with 28-man rosters. It's just not possible. It really isn't. I mean, think about it. You've got 14 position players on your roster. That is a rule. You could technically have more, but most teams carry the 14 pitchers to go along with the 14 position players when rosters expand to 28. So if you only have 14 position players, 9 of them are mostly regulars, there's only 5 guys on your bench. So sure, you can sit a bunch of guys, but there's only so many guys that you can sit when you have those few amount of guys sitting there on your bench. Let me get to some of your emails. We'll see if Carlos Mendoza officially announces the order of this doubleheader. But the doubleheader is official. They have to play both games. Both games will be played. The winner of game 1 makes the postseason. Unbelievable. Michael had a conspiracy theory. Are the San Diego Padres losing on purpose? Look, just like the Mets, maybe the Diamondbacks came ready to play today. But I can't help but feel like the Padres would also like to ensure that their potential wild card round opponent has to play baseball in Atlanta on Monday. Thoughts? You know, it's a great, weird, probably not true, but worthy of thinking about point. The San Diego Padres, by losing today, assured that not only do the Mets and the Braves have to play a doubleheader, they have to play 2 games. And like I mentioned earlier, the Padres are only playing the New York Mets or the Atlanta Braves. There is no scenario where the San Diego Padres are playing the rested Arizona Diamondbacks in the wild card round. So by San Diego getting absolutely blown out in this game, what they have assured is that they're playing somebody, an East Coast team, Atlanta relatively East Coast, an Eastern time zone team at home in San Diego after playing 2 games. The Padres are evil geniuses. With that said, thank you, San Diego, because if they didn't win 2 out of 3, the Mets scenario would be vastly different. So thank you to the San Diego Padres for at least winning the series. They did do that, which I appreciate.
I don't know if this is breaking news or not, but Passan came out with this. I don't know what the original plan was where these games were being played televised-wise, but Passan just says with Arizona and New York winning in Atlanta, losing the full doubleheader between Mets and Braves is happening Monday. Both games will be aired on ESPN2.
Well, we're not losing SNY, though, are we?
I don't know, but I hope not.
No. They can't. First of all, Gary Cohn even said late in the broadcast, games on SNY. It's so rare for this to happen, but hey, there was a rain out. Like, you could tell how excited they were about the fact the game is on SNY. Look, if it's not on SNY, I think it will be. I think they're just going to also put it on ESPN too. Don't worry, because like I said, Evan and Tiki, 2:00 on the Fan, we're going to be doing a live watch party. We actually rented out. Rented out is probably not the right term. We have a performance space at the studios of WFAN, big performance studio. And we went to the higher-ups and said, can you put the Met game on a big screen, have us do the show from this performance space? We'll eat a crap ton of food. Everyone in the building can watch. And so the show tomorrow will also have a live studio audience. I was thinking about selling tickets, but there was a legal hurdle with that.
Oh, well, I know I'll be there, so I'm excited about that.
The Hoff will be there.
Go.
Nice.
Let's go.
Do you think the Padres were losing on purpose? Because, I mean, it's an evil genius plan to lose on purpose, knowing that the Mets and the Braves are now forced to play 2 games on the East Coast before they come to you in California.
Yeah, 100%. They didn't care. They're locked up. They did enough damage against Diamondbacks. It was perfect for them. They basically said they were going to change their rotation, right? I mean, who went yesterday in last night's game for them? I forget. But they basically sat like King and some other people that they didn't need to pitch.
Well, the pitching makes a lot of sense because they do have a series Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. I mean, that's the plan. Why would you mess with your pitching? They sat a few of their regulars, like Luis Arraez sat on Saturday but played on Sunday. Manny Machado played on Saturday, didn't play on Sunday. And they came out and won a big game on Saturday. The Padres beating the Diamondbacks on Saturday night was monstrous for us as Met fans because if the Diamondbacks win one more game, the scenario for tomorrow would have been a lot more dire, which is you got to win twice as opposed to you only have to win once. Dan writes, remember when the Chargers and Raiders both could have made the playoffs if they tied? And then while the Raiders were trying to just let the clock run out, Brandon Staley decided to be a douche and call a timeout and wound up kicking his own team out. What if we take a page out of that book for tomorrow and have a little agreement with the Braves that we'll throw Tyler McGill in game 1 because he will basically be a human forfeit on the mound in that situation. So they can clinch and then they can just celebrate and take game 2 off. Just put all our trust in beating the backup Braves. Sounds like the perfect plan, right? What could possibly go wrong? It's pretty sad when I'm sitting here coming up with back alley backdoor deals to get us into the actually just winning a single game in that park. Yeah. There will be no backroom deals. The only backroom deal, and it's not really a backroom deal, the only deal is that the winner of game 1 is not going to throw high leverage arms in game 2. And so there's no excuse for that team, whether it's us or it's Atlanta, to not beat up the back end of bullpens. Like, if we're facing Dylan Lee and John Brebbia and I'm trying to think who else, Dylan, whatever his name is, and Joe Jimenez, actually, he's good. Pierce Johnson. Actually, the Braves have a lot of good arms, now that I think about it. Luke Jackson, Jesse Chavez, not Raisel Iglesias. God knows we're not going to see him. Aaron Bummer. Like, if the Mets can't hit the low leverage back of Atlanta's bullpen, it's not a backroom deal. It's just you got to get the job done. And that's on them. William asks the same question. Evan, could the Mets forfeit a game and the Braves forfeit a game and then both teams make the playoffs? It's funny to think that if the Mets and the Braves were mad at Major League Baseball, and they're not, the Braves certainly aren't, because the Braves had a lot to do with the way that the situation was handled last week. They refused to move. They refused to move up start times, whether it was gamesmanship or whether it was the gate that they sold. The Atlanta Braves led to this. But if both teams were mad at Major League Baseball, sure. They can just look into each other's eyes and say, why are we doing this? But the Braves set this whole thing up. This really is on the Atlanta Braves.
We got an update from JD Martinez. They were talking about pressure, I guess, going into this final day of baseball. And he said, we can't put pressure on ourselves. We weren't supposed to be here.
Oh, he's got to stop with that. You got to stop with that. I don't want to hear that, JD. You know, that was the line that was used after the team meeting back in June. Well, no one expects us to be here, so no one thinks we're any good, and all the pressure is off. And the question was, how were they going to respond to when the pressure is back on? Because naturally, that's what happens in sports. You can change expectations. JD Martinez has to understand something, and I hope he does. Now, if the Mets are just playing mind tricks with themselves to relax them as they go into Atlanta, fine. Play whatever tricks you want to make. But considering where they were in the standings and considering where they are today, a doubleheader that they need to split, where in the second game, the Braves won't give a rat's ass if you lose game one. Losing both games of this doubleheader would be an epic collapse. It would be right up there with all the other collapses this franchise has had. 98, 2007, 2008, you name it. It's up there. And we'll be doing off-season Ricos debating if it was the worst. We got about 5 Ricos planned for that one. Is this the worst collapse ever? You have 2 games in Atlanta in which, in the worst-case scenario, one of them will be played by a Brave team that won't care. They'll be halfway to San Diego by the time that game takes place. Brian Snitker may leave in the 5th inning just to get a head start. So, yeah, no one expected us to be here. No Met fan wants to hear that. Danny Lanigan writes, I got a crazy scenario. DFA someone, call up a pitcher for game 2. Evan, MLB royally F this one up. Tomorrow, and then this ensuring travel to San Diego on Wednesday is bonkers. But how about this one? If the Mets win game 1 tomorrow, the Mets likely will DFA send out a player to call up a starting pitcher for game 2, right? Same for Atlanta. There's no reason to waste a starting pitcher for game 2. If either actually started one of their SPs, they'd also not have a starter for Tuesday. The lesson, as always, is that Rob Manfred is a moron. So, yeah, there's nothing against that part. Obviously, you got to make sure that whoever you get rid of, you can't just bring back a couple of days later. So if your idea was, I'm going to option down, trying to think of somebody with options that you can do that with. Like David Peterson actually has options, right? You can't option David Peterson down because the rules still follow that you have to wait 10 days before you recall that guy. So, yeah, if you're done with a guy, if you've already determined, here's the problem, because I'm going through this in my head. A lot of the guys you'd be wanting to DFA or send down are those same arms you would use in a game like this. So we can say, oh, just send down Alex Young. Alex Young's going to be one of the guys that you're going to put out there. I'll tell you the other option, and this would be a mockery to Major League Baseball. But look, Major League Baseball created this problem, and that is when a position player comes in a pitch. And I don't think that scenario is that crazy, especially wondering how the games play out, wondering bullpen usage from game 1. If the Mets are trying to get through a game 2 after they've won, God willing, and Adam Ottavino just can't get 3 outs and he takes one on the chin, before you know it, Eddie Alvarez may come in to pitch. Granted, that would probably occur in a scenario where the game is already well decided. But yeah, you can DFA someone, you can send someone down, you can call someone up, but you got to be careful on who you send down, because once you send that guy down, that's it for 10 days. So that's what you got to be careful of. More questions about a gentleman's agreement. Sam writes, can the Mets and Braves essentially agree to split the doubleheader? Obviously, they can't do that officially, but seriously, though, they can play whomever they want. Play game 1 straight, and then the winner play a bunch of backups and pitch a bullpen game with your worst pen guys doing multiple innings in game 2. Or do you think there is enough bad luck that the winner of game 1 will look to stick it to the other team and win game 2? Bad blood is what he said. My apologies. Is there enough bad blood that the winner of game 1 will try to stick it to the other team and win game 2? Hard to do that without compromising playoff games the next 3 nights. No, I don't think you're going to bullpen in an aggressive way that negatively affects you. But I'll give you this example. If the Atlanta Braves have already determined that a guy wouldn't be available for the wild card series because it's best of 3 and they've won game 1, and that guy's not going to be on the roster for the wild card series, then there's less hesitation of using that guy. There just is, because he's not going to be pitching in the wild card series anyway. So from that standpoint, sure, that's what you can do. Like, I don't think this is a great example, because I think Spencer Schwellenbach is probably going to pitch game 1. But if the Braves had determined, you know what, we're not going to have Schwellenbach pitch in the wild card series, which I guess he wouldn't be able to do now anyway, because if you pitch Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, you're out. You won't be on the roster. But if it was game 2 and you had already decided, hey, we're going to go with a rotation of Chris Sale, Max Fried, Reynaldo Lopez, you could do that. By the way, that doesn't work because someone's pitching Monday, and whoever is pitching game one of that doubleheader is not going to be available in the wild card series. So if it is Spencer Schwellenbach, sure, the Braves aren't going to have limitations on him because he's not going to pitch in the wild card series, but it's also game one, the game that they're trying to win. So you can try to think of scenarios where there's a guy that you know you're not going to have on the roster for the next round, and maybe you can be more aggressive in using that person. Kevin Johnson writes, the positive of analytics. Given the unique circumstances of Monday, I would like the bullpen strategy to be 99% predetermined. What I mean is, I want the geeks and managers to figure out a plan on every bullpen scenario for game one tomorrow. Examples. We need to make a pitching change, and it's the bottom of the seventh, and the Braves are winning 3-0. Is it Adam Ottavino or Huascar Brazoban? Or are we still using Phil Maton and Jose Butto? What if both starting pitchers are getting lit up and it's 5-5 in the middle of the fourth? I want all that mapped out tonight. We need to be as prepared as possible. What do you say? Boy, that's a tough one, man, because the last thing you want to do is give up on a game. So if it's 5-2 in the fifth inning or the fourth inning, and you're pulling whether it's McGill or Severino that starts game one, are you really going to go to low leverage guys because your attitude is, I got to keep my fresh arms available for the second game? You'd essentially, I don't want to say you're giving up on the game, but you kind of are. I think you got to play it by ear. I think you have to see the way a game is going. They used Jose Butto aggressively on Friday in a game in which they were trailing, in which Mendy made that decision. At that point in the game, I'm still going for the win. And so he went to one of his better arms, Jose Butto, knowing he's not going to be available Saturday, and he's probably not going to be available Sunday. Jose Butto is certainly an example where once you use him, that's it. And not only is that it, that's it probably for game one of the wild card series if the Mets are there. This whole thing is crazy. This whole thing is just, I have a headache thinking about it, to be honest with you. It's freaking blowing my mind. I mean, so many weird possibilities of what could actually happen. Hoff, officially, where would you go game one? The Mets starters, according to, all right, here's an update on the pitching. Spencer Schwellenbach will start the first game against the Mets. We assume that. Makes a lot of sense. If the Mets win, then they'll see Chris Sale. Obviously, seeing Chris Sale after we clinch, who gives a crap? I don't think any of us care about that. So Spencer Schwellenbach starts game one for Atlanta. The Mets have not announced who starts game one. Luis Severino and Tyler McGill are the options, but officially, according to Tim Healy, they have not said who they're going to start in game one. Spencer Schwellenbach starting for Atlanta. What say you? Who would you start in game one? Would you give him a rematch with Severino, or do you go conservative with McGill? I apologize if you answered this already.
We did, but I still say that McGill's the guy.
I'm sorry, say it again.
McGill, go to McGill, and that's not saying that because I have confidence in McGill, but he's pitched better as of late, and if he gets blown up, I think that we have the handcuff in Severino in the second game.
Yeah, I stand by that. I agree, and I don't think that's punting game one. It's being conservative, sure. It's saying, all right, if everything goes wrong. Look, Atlanta's kind of doing the same thing. Obviously, Luis Severino isn't Chris Sale, and Spencer Schwellenbach isn't Tyler McGill. There's a lot of differences. Basically, the differences are both Brave pitchers are better. I mean, those are the differences. But Snitker's taking that approach of, I'm holding off using my ace. If I need to use my ace, I'll use him. If I lose game one and my season's on the line in game two, I'm not going to mess around. I'll go with Chris Sale. What other choice do I have? And then I'll worry about game one of the wild card series when I worry about it. No one's getting cute to the point of they lost game one, but because the other team is starting God knows who, we'll bullpen it too. We'll win anyway. No one's going to get that crazy. Obviously, you can't take any risks once you get to game two, but the Brave approach is basically what I would do, which is McGill game one, Severino game two, if need be. I don't know how you guys are feeling, Met fans. I feel like crap. I got to tell you, we could sit here all day talking about how the Braves are going to play nobody in game two. Don't worry if they lose game one. That will be the most tense Met game we've watched, probably more than any of the playoff games in 2022. more than even that game 3 against the Padres. That game, if they lose game 1, and they now have their backs to the wall against God knows who pitches for Atlanta, but deep down knowing the Braves who are playing, they'll want to stick it to us. If you're on the field, you're going to want to stick it to us. If Travis d'Arnaud's getting that bad, he's going to want to stick it to us. No matter who it is. Orlando Arce is going to want to stick it to us. Doesn't freaking matter. That would be some of the worst baseball to watch for 2.5 hours. And God knows I got to do it on the air. Oh, my God. Monday is sounding like one of the worst days in Met history. It really does. It sounds like it has the makings for going down as one of the worst days in the history of the franchise.
You're just going to have to tell Loogie to play a lot of spots.
No. We're going to be on the air. It's going to be painful. I mean, you're going to have to, we'll all get to experience what it's like watching a Met game together. So for those that wanted a live Rico on Saturday night, you got it, except it ain't a Rico. Sort of is. Live on WFAN while mixing in all the other things like Karl Anthony Towns and the New York Jets sucking.
Hey, well, first of all, just because you bring up the cat stuff, you bring up the fact that the Broncos beat the Jets, it really is turning into a blue and orange type of week. So I feel good about tomorrow because of that. That being said, 2 things that you can't go unnoticed before we end this podcast. One, we have to congratulate the Chicago White Sox for breaking the Mets losing record.
You know what? They did, but they didn't. Because the Mets still had a lower winning percentage in 1962 than the Chicago White Sox. The Mets were 40-120 that year. This White Sox team is 41-121. So as far as I'm concerned, the 1962 Mets remain the kings of ineptitude in the modern era. Thank you very much.
Right, okay. Barry Bonds didn't break the home run record. Got it. He played 12 games more or whatever it was. And do you think, honestly, I know there's 2 games left of the season, Francisco Lindor, will he get that one stolen base to give him a back-to-back 30-30-30?
I freaking hope so, because if he leads off game 1 of the doubleheader with a base hit, run, do it again. I think it's a good thing if he does. Quickly about the lineup. Knowing that Spencer Schwellenbach is going to start the first game of this doubleheader. So when they faced Spencer Schwellenbach a couple of days ago, let me see how everybody did. Let's see. I know mostly everybody sucked. Mark Vientos was the only guy that came through. He had 2 hits against Schwellenbach. Iglesias was 1 for 3. Nimmo was 0 for 3. Marte was 0 for 3. Alonso was 0 for 2. Winker was 0 for 3. Vientos was 2 for 3. Tyrone was 0 for 3. Alvarez was 0 for 3. Acuna was 0 for 2. I think I stick with J.D. Martinez. I do. I think that J.D. breaking out of his slump, maybe not in the most impressive way, but he did get a couple of hits. I would trust him right now over Jesse Winker. So even though it's a right-hander, I would stick with J.D. Martinez. In fact, I think I would stick with the Met lineup that they used here in game number 160. Same kind of thing. Francisco Lindor is back at shortstop. Iglesias obviously plays second base. Taylor's in center. Marte's in right. I guess Marte could be the guy you sit down. Do you sit Marte for Jesse Winker? That one I'd consider. I'm 50-50 on that one. I lean a little bit towards sticking with Starling Marte just because he can do little things like lay down a bunt and maybe use his speed to create something happening. Jesse Winker really can't do that. And I got Jesse Winker on the bench anyway if I really want to use him. So I would actually stick with a very similar lineup to what they used in game 160 that I would use in game 161 against Spencer Schwellenbach. So what a day tomorrow is going to be. We will have a Rico Brogna, even after, basically on the air watching both games. We will have a Rico Brogna at some point Monday night. I'm going to assume, Pete, we're going to do that very late at night because after doing a 5-hour radio show, because it may go 5 hours. I've already said to the bosses, since there's nothing on until Monday Night Football, I think Tommy does a show, but Tommy will be a part of this kind of watch party on Evan and Tiki, that we're going to stay on the air for the second game until it's over. So if it goes past 6:30, we'll remain on the air. So we'll stay on for both games and then hopefully just go to sleep for a little bit. And then we'll do a Rico late at night. So expect your Rico Brogna recapping the doubleheader, hopefully also previewing the playoffs. Because if we're not previewing the playoffs too, and it's just a funeral procession, it is going to go down as the most depressing Rico Brogna we have ever done. Even more so than all those Ricos we did in 2022 when they were getting swept by Atlanta and losing Game 3 to San Diego. So that's how we'll line things up for Monday. Live on the air. Definitely stay tuned. We'll be doing a live watch party with you, keeping you posted as the game is going on through both games. Mostly the first game, if the Mets win it. If the second game doesn't matter to the Mets, obviously there'll be a little bit less of that. And then we'll have a Rico later that night. Assume 10, 11 o'clock at night. That would be my assumption. Pete, any final words before we head to war down in the great state of Georgia on a Monday afternoon?
Hold on to your butts.
Oh, yeah. Hold on. And I would say to think positive, Met fans, but I'd be lying to you. This really feels like we are about to witness another chapter in New York Mets pain. I hope I'm wrong. I hope we will have a jubial, whatever the word is, Rico Brogna late Monday night where we'll pop champagne live on the Rico. I hope we do. But I got to tell you, my final words, I don't feel good about this. I don't feel good about this. Thank you very much for listening, hanging out with us live, or downloading wherever you download your podcast. And remember to subscribe. Thank you for listening to Rico Brogna.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of the Rico Brogna podcast. It's amazing, isn't it? Make sure you download it now to keep it on you at all times.